12,500 moss an hour on a single cell moss farm? Oh, we can totally do it. I was watching a recent Mumbo Jumbo Hermitcraft video, and he talked about building a moss farm that used double piston extenders. I was intrigued and sat down to see if I could design one myself. What I came up with was this farm that can generate more than 12,500 moss blocks an hour. I'll show you how to build it, then I'll explain how it works. Finally, I'll explain some of the limitations of this contraption and give you some ideas on how to expand. Let's get started on the build. The material list is in the description. I'm going to scroll through the Lightmatica list here as well. The smooth stone in the list can be any solid building block. When dealing with redstone contraptions, I typically recommend starting with the output and collection system first. This build is no different. We're going to start with a dropper, add one hopper to it, pointing into the side, and then we're going to add 9 hoppers coming off the back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Next, place a single solid block, in this case I'm using smooth stone, you can use whatever you want, on top of this hopper pointing into the dropper. Then add composters covering all of the rest of the hoppers. Next, we're going to add an observer. Place it here next to the composter so it's pointing towards the dropper. Then place a block of soul sand on top of the dropper, and then finish surrounding it with stone. Finally, you could place an observer in front of the other one. This will create an observer clock. Now, if this is really annoying for you, when it's loud and clicking and stuff while you're building, you can wait to add this observer until the end. Next, we're going to build up the bubble column. So we're going to go up 13 blocks. So this will be block 0, and then go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And then do this on the rest of the sides. Now this will be for a bubble column. If you're building this in survival, it may be easier for you to add water to each block as you go up. You could also use ice and break it, or water buckets, however you want to do it. We're just going to end up filling this column with water. However you choose to fill it, just be sure that you have source blocks going all the way up. Back here where we have the composters, add a row of hoppers that each points into a composter like so. Next, we're going to be building a 14 by 14 platform. So bring your building blocks and build out next to these hoppers. You're going to come out, so you should be 3 blocks beyond the back of your hoppers. Now come out from this corner where we've got, this is block 1. We'll add another 13 blocks. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So we are 14 blocks on this side and then 14 blocks on this side. Go ahead now and fill out this square. As you come around the back, your square should end at your bubble column. And then, as I said, go ahead and fill it in. All filled in, it should look something like this. I've added frog lights to keep mob spawns down. You can add whatever light blocks you'd like, or just put torches on top, whatever works for you. The next part of the collection system is going to be a series of impulse SV sorting filters. So we're going to add hoppers to these first 6 hoppers here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The filters are going to come out this way. Add a redstone torch on the outside. Drop a repeater in, so it's pointing into the block with the torch on it. Add 3 blocks above the torch, the center block, and the repeater. Place a comparator on this first block so it points back this way, away from your hoppers. And then place down redstone dust. We're going to repeat this 5 more times, so there's 1 of these behind each of these hoppers. When you're done building the filters, you should have something that looks like this. The next thing we're going to do is place a row of our building blocks right here in front of the hoppers. So we come 1 past the hopper here, and all the way over to our bubble column. Then place levers on each block that has a hopper behind it. So you should have 6 levers. Place barrels or shulker boxes if you prefer on each solid block above the levers. And then place your building blocks around the barrels. Come back behind the barrels so that you're standing on your filters and add hoppers pointing into the back of each one. The next step is to take your building blocks and place a row of them on top of the barrels, going from your water column all the way over to 1 block beyond where your barrels are sitting. Now replace one of these stone blocks, this one that's over the third from the right, 1, 2, 3, this one, with a block of packed ice. This is going to be the bottom of a water stream. Now place hoppers pointing into those blocks in front of each comparator. The next step is to configure each of these hoppers for whatever you want to filter for. So right-click on the hopper, add an iron nugget to each of the last 4 slots, or you can use any other item. It just has to be something that won't come out of the farm. And then add whatever it is you want to sort for. So the first section might be for moss. Go into the next hopper and do the same thing. Add your 4 filter items and then whatever you want to filter for example, carpet. And then do this for each of these hoppers going down the line. If you don't want to filter for something, right, if all you want is carpet or moss, you can double those up. So you could put a moss block in this one and a moss block in this one, or you could just leave these blank and fill them in later. If you're not going to use them, you can fill these with iron nuggets or whatever your filter item is, just to keep anything from going in there. And that will keep that filter nice and clean for whenever you're ready to filter out anything. Now, something to keep in mind. A hopper can handle something like 9,500 blocks per hour. We're going to be sending over 12,000 moss blocks, so a single hopper will not keep up with the moss. That's okay. If you want to collect all of the moss, put it in 2 slots. If you're not worried about the extra moss not being filtered, that's awesome. It's going to come through and it's going to get composted and fed into the system to keep it going. This is a good thing. But if you want to catch all of the moss, go ahead and add it to multiple slices. Just to keep things interesting, I'm going to collect azalea saplings in these next 2 slots. Remember when I said the excess moss is going to get bone mealed? Let's go ahead and build that system up now. So come down to these last 3 hoppers right before your bubble column. Add a double chest on the left-hand side above the first row of hoppers. Next, add a column of hoppers going all the way up to the same level as your filters. Add 2 more hoppers going into the chest, 1 on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side of this column, add a hopper pointing into it. There's a little bit of magic happening here. What'll happen is moss will come in, or anything, all of the excess stuff that's not being filtered will come in, and this hopper configuration will bring things down into this chest and help keep items distributed a little bit going into these 2 composters, as well as into this composter down here. Now, to make things a little bit nicer, because I've seen this back up, you can take this hopper that's right next to the chest, take it out, and point it into the chest instead. Items will still flow down to this composter first, but if it starts to back up, it'll go into the chest and help distribute the load across these 3 hoppers and these 3 composters. The next thing we're going to do is finish up our waterway here, or at least the base of it. So add 2 of your building blocks, add 2 packed ice, and then 3 more building blocks. Next, add a temporary block here, add another block on top of that, then you can take out your temporary block, and then run a series of blocks that come along the outside here, or the inside maybe if you want to think of it that way, and just run this all along here. This is going to help keep our water contained, and just bring it here to the edge of the bubble column. You could bring it all the way here. You could fill this in if you want to. It's not necessary. Now over the hoppers, place 1 solid block against the bubble column over that last hopper, and then take some stone brick walls and place them over each of the remaining hoppers. Then come around to the side, and we're going to place a chest next to that wall. And if we hop up here, turn that into a double chest. It's important that this is a double chest. It's going to help keep our items flowing correctly. Next, add a temporary block next to the chest, and then fill in with your stone building blocks all the way along the side here. And then you can remove that block that's next to the chest. Next, take your favorite colors of signs. Just for grins and giggles, I'm going to put a spruce sign right here where we've got these 2 ice blocks. Place a sign here. So I'll use spruce for this one. You can use whatever sign you want. Then come over to your hoppers where we have this one packed ice block and place a sign right next to it. Place another row of building blocks here along the water channel. Next, place a block on top of the chest and one next to it. And then bring blocks out so we have 3 blocks coming out this way. So we're starting to come over our item filter. This is going to become the beginning of a platform that's going to start holding a bunch of our redstone. Take your building blocks, place them over all of these walls, and you can come all the way over to the bubble column, and then fill out these along the side here above the item filter. Again, these are going to stick out a couple of blocks from the walls. Now with your building blocks, come over on the other side of our water channel and add another row of the blocks going all the way across like so. Now come in 3 blocks from the right, 1, 2, 3, and place another sign. This should be up diagonally from the sign we placed earlier. So we have the spruce sign down at the bottom and the pale oak sign up on the top. Now it's time to add water to our water stream. So come all the way over to the far end, place in a water bucket. It's not going to flow very far. That's okay. Now in this block above the spruce sign and next to the pale oak sign, place another bucket of water. This should flow over and all the way over to this side that's by the hoppers. And then place 1 more bucket of water that will flow down the rest of the way. This water column is what's going to bring all of the drops from the farm into our sorting system and the composter. The way this is going to work is items are going to flow down. They're going to hit this chest, which is going to align the items so they're going to get picked up right along the edge of these hoppers and these blocks. So the water will continue to push them and the hoppers can pick them up. Next, take your row of building blocks and we're going to cover up this water stream that's over by the hoppers. Now come to the far side of the water channel and build out 3 more blocks. We're going to build a platform coming out from our water stream and across the top of what we have. And this is going to line up with this block all the way over here, this one right here, that's next to our bubble column. So as a sanity check, this row should be 9 blocks long. Now build all the way across. So we're going to complete our rectangle and then fill this in with blocks. When you're done, your platform should look like this. This is a good time to take a sanity check and make sure everything is in the right place. Now come over to your water stream where we've got this pale oak sign and come over 3 blocks. So 1, 2, 3, and then punch out this 1 stone block right here. We're going to be putting a lever in there later, but we'll have to build some more layers up. The other thing we need to do is come back this way where I see I've got this frog light, and this is at the same level or the same row where this water is. Come all the way over this way and add 2 more blocks. Again, for a sanity check, it should look something like this. Okay, that was the easy part. Now it's time to get into the fun stuff. Now we're going to start touching the redstone. We're going to start by taking our building blocks and from the right-hand side of our water channel, add 3 blocks. 1, 2, 3. Now come down to the platform and we're going to add 2 rows of 7 target blocks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and a second row right next to it. Add 2 of your building blocks at the end of the line of target blocks and add 1 more here in the corner. Place a repeater pointing into the corner block. Now place redstone dust all along the sides of our target blocks. Do this on both sides. Next, add a row of your building blocks on top of the stone that you already have. And then we're going to add a line of pistons on top of each of these target blocks. This is the beginning of a stone generator. On top of the blocks next to the pistons, place 2 stone stairs. We're going to do this on each side. And then surround it with your building blocks. Now take a water bucket and waterlog the stairs on each side. Be sure to do both of them. You should have water flowing now over all of the pistons. Now come back over to our corner where we've got the repeater. Place a redstone torch and a block on top of it. Place a redstone torch on top of the block we just placed and add a stone block here to the right of it, and then come around and add another stone block on the side. So this should be the side farthest from our bubble column. Place a glass block over each stair, and then bring 9 of your building blocks all the way across. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now let's come down to this block that's by our redstone torch, come off to the side and add 2 more blocks. So we have a little bit of an L shape. Now we need to add 7 immovable blocks. I'm going to use furnaces. You could use obsidian if you prefer. It just needs to be something that cannot be pushed by pistons. When you're done, your blocks should line up with these pistons that we have in the base of our stone generator. Next, come over by your pistons and place sticky pistons against each of your furnaces. This is the beginning of our double piston extender. Now in front of each sticky piston, add a regular piston. It's important that you have sticky pistons in the back and regular pistons in the front. Place a building block in the corner next to your piston, and then add glass over the stairs. And then 1 more building block next to the glass. Now take a line of stone, this should be regular stone, and fill in front of the pistons. Also, we want to fill in all of this space here from the end of the line of our smooth stone building blocks all the way back here to the other side of our piston. We're going to go ahead and fill that in with stone. Now, our stone generators could do this for us, but we're going to be putting in some water, and I don't want to have the redstone that's going to go in the platform below us washed out. So this is a safety measure as much as anything else. The next step is to place an observer with the redstone pointing out towards the pistons. So put an observer on top of each piston with the face facing away and the redstone dot pointing towards you. This is what is going to actually power the pistons. Now take your building block and surround this gap that we have with all the water. So we're going to come across all of the glass, all the way across this first row of stone, and all the way back to the observers. When you're done, it should look something like this. Now here's where things are going to get hot and spicy. Grab your lava buckets and place a lava source on this center observer. And then come around and place one on the other side. So you have these 2 in the middle. Now, in theory, you can pretty much stop there. Those will be enough to do stone. I found it works a little bit better to add another lava source on each of the far sides. So we have 6 lava sources in total, 2 in the middle and 2 on each end. Now surround this with your building blocks. So you've got a row of building blocks across the first row of observers, all around the edge and around this edge as well. And then finally, top it with glass, because I don't like falling into lava, and I'm sure you don't either. Now, come over to the corner where we've got this redstone torch sticking up, add a block on top of it, and then 6 more coming towards the middle of the farm. So you should be coming out 3 blocks from the outside of your stone generator. Now let's head back to the corner, place a stone block, or whatever your building block is, here in the corner. Place a repeater. This should be on 4 ticks. And then another repeater on 4 ticks. Then place redstone dust on top of each of these furnaces. Now let's head down to our collection system, and we're going to build up with glass until we are 1 block short of the top here. 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is 5 blocks. And do this all the way across. When you're done, you should have a glass wall that looks like this. Now come back over into the farm, and at the end of this row of stone brick, add a glass block and bring it all the way over so that it connects with the glass wall. Now let's head back towards our bubble column, and with our stone building blocks, let's continue this out another 3 blocks, and then take a trap door, in this case I'm using spruce, and place 3 of them so they're facing out in the stone towards our glass wall. Now just a quick note, I just realized I can't count, and this is actually supposed to be in 1 block. So go ahead and take out the 1 row of glass. So what we should end up with is 3 blocks of glass wall on either side of this glass in the center. So at this point, we have 1 stone generator in. Let's come over to the other side and build the next one. So let's come over to the end of our water stream. And on top of the block that's on top of the chest, add 3 stone blocks. So 1, 2, 3. So 1's hanging over the water stream, and then they slide out this way. Next, we're going to add our target blocks. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them in 2 rows like so. And then place 2 more of your building blocks at the end. Again, this is going to be a mirror of what we did on the other side. Place a block in the corner with a repeater pointing into it, just on its default 1 tick, and then run redstone dust all along the sides pointing into the target blocks. Again, this should match what's happening on the other side. Add 3 more building blocks above the 3 over here on the left. Add 2 more on the side on the right. And then we're going to add our pistons on top of the target blocks. Again, we should have them in 2 rows just like so. Except for that one that's pointing in the wrong way. There we go. So there, we should have 2 rows of pistons pointing up. Now come back to this far corner. Add your redstone torch and a smooth stone block on top of it. Then bring your building blocks all the way across so they come back here to the edge of the stone. Place stone stairs on the blocks right next to the pistons. And this is a good time to run your smooth stone across in front of the pistons as well. And then, of course, the stairs go on both sides. Now take your water bucket, waterlog the stairs on both sides. Again, this should mirror what we were doing on the other side. The water will flow and cover all of our pistons. Now let's place a glass block on top of the stairs with a stone block next to each of them. Or I guess smooth stone technically. Whatever building block you're using. So you should have something like so. Next, place a redstone torch on this block here. It should turn off. And then we're going to place 3 smooth stone blocks, right? Whatever your building block is, in this L shape. Then come over to this L and place 7 furnaces or whatever your immovable block is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now jump back across, place sticky pistons against each of those furnaces, and then place pistons against each of the sticky pistons. Now this is a good place to stop and double check and make sure you have everything correct. Just like we did on the other side, we're going to place 2 observers on top of the pistons. So 1 on top of the sticky piston and 1 on top of the regular piston, like so. Now bring your building blocks around your pit like this. Again, we should have this nice little area where we're going to put our lava. And speaking of lava, we'll put 2 on the sides of each side, and then we'll put 1 in the, or we'll put 2 actually on each side in the middle. Again, this will match what's happening on the other side. Now let's surround our lava pit with our building blocks. And then we'll cover the lava with glass. Again, I do not like falling into lava. Not my favorite thing in the world. Now let's head back to this back corner. Place a block in the corner. Place a repeater on 4 ticks going into it. 4 ticks coming out of it. And then add redstone on top of the furnaces in front of each of these observers. Once that is done, we can come back over here and fill in these blocks that lead up to the repeater. Now let's head over to these trapdoors and add some water so that they are waterlogged. Okay. Add a building block. This needs to be a solid block on the glass that's between them. And then add glass on top of the water. Now let's get in and start building our bone meal and moss generating system. So coming off this block here, add 2 redstone dust and a dispenser that's pointing out towards this wall of glass. In front of the dispenser, add a moss block and then fill in glass. So you've got 4 more blocks heading out towards this gap. Next, hop over to your dispenser, add a hopper pointing down into it, and then add 3 hoppers that point into that first hopper. So the last one should be over this block. And then add 1 more glass block right here on top of the block next to the moss, okay? So what you should have is something that looks like this. Now on top of these hoppers, add 3 stone blocks, right? So we have stone blocks over each of these 3 hoppers. And then add a piston pointing down so it points out into the moss block. So it looks something like this. Place a glass block on top of the last hopper. Next, add a repeater on 4 ticks on top of each of those blocks. So the glass block and each of these 3 stone blocks. And then add another stone block on top of the piston. Now you may be looking at this and saying, hey, those hoppers don't connect anything. And you would be correct. We're going to get to that in a minute. But we have some redstone to place here, and those hoppers and water stream that we're going to put in are just going to be in the way. So let's come over to this side, place a redstone torch, right? So here's our lava. We're going to place a redstone torch, and then place 3 repeaters, and these should be on 4 ticks each. Then add 3 redstone dust. Now let's go to the other side, and we're going to repeat the process. Again, redstone torch, 1, 2, 3 repeaters on 4 ticks each, and then 1, 2, 3 redstone dust. And then finally, take a repeater on this glass block, just on the default 1 tick, pointing into the block under the hopper. Now that that redstone is in place, we can bring in the hoppers. So put another hopper pointing into that line of 4, and then add a couple of more. Strictly speaking, these 2 hoppers aren't necessary. You just need this one on the end. But I feel like I get better moss or bone meal pickup if I do this. And then at the end of these hoppers, we're going to add these 2 blocks. Now it's time to complete our water stream to bring our bone meal up here. So add 3 stone blocks around the outside of the bubble column. Add 2 more on this side. Then come over to the right and bring some more stone blocks going across. Now for the moment, we'll just come out to about here. We'll extend this out in a little bit, but let's stop about here. Now grab some glass and come out from this glass block that's under the repeater. So bring out 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks. So we have this nice little water channel. Then take a packed ice block and set it right here next to the hoppers. So our water stream will come down across these hoppers and then across this ice block. Next, add a trapdoor, or you could use a sign here, but I'm going to use a trapdoor so that the water will cross these hoppers and definitely stop here. Again, we'll worry about the rest of this water channel here in a minute. Finally, come back to your water column and add another water source at the top so that the water comes across this way. Next, come over and place a block on top of the water stream. This will keep the items from getting blasted up into the stratosphere, and instead they'll hit the block and then whoosh across all of these hoppers and then down to wherever else we want our bone meal to go. Now, the last thing we need to build is a way to collect the excess bone meal that this farm will generate. So here we've got our barrels, come across to this far corner and come in 2 blocks and place a chest with a hopper on top of it. Next, we're going to surround the hopper with glass, and let's bring this all the way up to the top of the farm here. And for this column right here, this comes up by the redstone, that's fine. It'll hit this stone, and that's perfectly fine. We just need a place to keep things contained. Now we can come back across the top of the farm where we have this ice block sitting up here. Let's go ahead and bring some stone blocks across, and we're just going to run things right across the top of the farm like so. Okay, so we'll run the stone blocks across. So we've got, about 6 blocks here, and then come across the top so we can still look in and see the lava, and we bring this in this way. We also want to obviously keep the water contained, so go ahead and bring glass on the inside of the farm. I like having the glass here. It makes it easier to see what's going on. Okay. And then bring some stone or whatever your building block is around the outside. Now come back to our trapdoor, place a water source next to it so the bone meal will hit here, slide across the ice into the water stream, and you see where the water stops here. Go ahead and break that block, put in some ice and a trapdoor. You can use signs as well, doesn't really matter. Then take a water bucket and we'll flood things this way. Now, to keep things flowing nicely, I found it helps just to put a sign here at the end. So the items will flow through all of our bone meal, right? Will flow down this water stream, hit the end of the water, the sign, and will drop straight down into that hopper and into the chest down below. Now, the cool thing is this is just a water stream. So if you don't want it coming down the front, that's fine. Send it anywhere you want to. However you want your bone meal to flow, you've got all the power here. This is just a simple example of how you can bring it down so it's in the same area as all of your other collected items. Now it's time to build the clock that's going to run the farm. So come down underneath the stone platform, in between all of these target blocks and redstone, and we're going to start by building an etho hopper clock. So we'll start by placing a block over this hole, put a comparator pointing into that block. Okay, next we need a couple of hoppers pointing into each other. So go ahead and place them like so. Grab another comparator and another block. Now, I'm one of those paranoid types that likes to put blocks on top of the hoppers to keep them from accidentally picking up things they shouldn't. But on top of that, this will also help keep lag down a little bit because these hoppers don't need to be looking for anything else. Next, put redstone dust next to each of those blocks and a sticky piston connected to each of the redstone dust. And then add a block of redstone. Next, place an observer looking at the gap next to the redstone block, right? So you've got the piston, the redstone block, the observer is looking into the gap, and then place a repeater on 2 ticks behind the observer. Now we're going to add 3 redstone dust coming out of this repeater and along the sides next to it. Place a comparator on the left-hand side pointing away from the redstone, and then next to it, place a comparator pointing the other way and then add 2 more redstone dust. This is going to give us a pulse extender. Now, place a repeater pointing into the redstone dust that goes over towards this torch column. Place one on each side, and then run redstone dust in between them. Next, add a line of redstone dust that comes on this line from the left-hand comparator, right? So it comes like so. And we've got these little 2 blocks that stick out. We should be coming in towards the right-hand side of that. Now, place a line of redstone dust on the left-hand side of these 2 stone blocks and take a target block and have it stick off the end. It might be a little bit easier to come around to the back side to do that. And then place a redstone torch on top of the target block. Now what we're going to do is build a redstone torch tower coming all the way up to the top of this water stream. So it should come up, the last block should be at the same level as the repeaters. Then we can place a block here on the left with a redstone torch angled off of it. This should then power all of these repeaters and power that piston. Now, obviously that's going to be a problem, so then we just need to place a redstone dust on top of the last block. So we've got torch, dust, angled torch, and then all of the repeaters. This is what's going to power our piston so that it breaks all of the garbage that generates on top of the moss so that the farm will keep working. Now we also need to come down here where we've got the trapdoors with the water, and then there's this repeater that's sitting on the glass block. Place a bit of smooth stone next to the glass block, and then some redstone dust. So this will connect this redstone torch that goes up the torch tower into this repeater, and then pushes through the block and into the dispenser. This is what's going to trigger the dispenser to feed bone meal into the moss and then generate all of our moss. Now, back in our timer where we've got our etho hopper clock, stick a lever on top of this block. We can turn it on for now if we'd like, or we can leave it off, right? This is how we're going to turn the clock on and off for testing, okay? Now, if we come back around, now I've placed a sign here so that we know that we can come into this hopper and place in 12 items, okay? 12 I found works really well for me. You can adapt this to your needs. If you're finding you're getting a little cobblestone in here, feel free to add a couple more items. 16 tends to be pretty good too, but 12, it worked great for me in testing. Once you have those in, everything's going to be running. So now you can flip the lever and turn it off. Now, this farm is going to need a little bit of bone meal to get started, so go ahead and drop a stack of bone meal in. Now we can come back into the clock, flip the lever so things get turned on. Now you can see the moss is being generated. Our stone generators are breaking all of our moss, and what ends up happening is the moss gets pushed up top and gets flooded down into our water stream and then into all of our hoppers. Now this works great, but this lever is really, really inconvenient. So if we come back down here where all of our collection stuff is, remember I left this hole here? Here you can slap in a lever, and this is our on-off switch. So you can flip this on and it stops the farm. You might even want to put a sign here so that you know how this works. If you were annoyed by the noise of the dispenser and you took out the observer down here before, now's the time to put it back. And we now have a working moss farm. Let's take a moment now and go through how to actually use the thing. As I mentioned before, we put in the on-off switch for the whole farm. So we can come right up here, flip the switch, and it turns the farm off when the redstone lever is powered, or on when the switch is unpowered, okay? So let's go and turn the farm off for a minute, and let's talk about the other features. Now remember we set these filters when we built the collection system at the very beginning. as it sits now, everything's going to flow through into the composters. In fact, you can see things have been composting already. But what happens if you actually want to collect things? In this first slice, we're collecting moss, and you can see it's got 41 moss blocks in there already. If you come flip this lever in the moss stack, and you can label these however you have your stuff collected, what'll happen is it locks this hopper. You can see I've got a resource pack that shows when a hopper is powered. So you can see this hopper is now powered. So what'll happen is as moss flows in, it will come down through these hoppers, and because this hopper is now permanently locked, it will then flow into the barrel instead. So let me turn the farm back on, and we can see how that works. Right? See, we've got nothing in there now. And as the farm runs for a minute, now you can see we're collecting moss. And you can do the same thing for everything else that you want to collect. So I had moss blocks in the first row. I think I had carpet in the second. So we turn this on, and now we're starting to collect carpet as it comes in. And we can do the same thing for the next two, and we should start seeing eventually azalea saplings coming in. Now those generate a lot slower, so it may take a moment. Now, this is great, but it's important to keep in mind, for everything you collect, it doesn't get converted into bone meal down here to keep the farm running. Now, with regular moss, you generate enough stuff that you don't typically need to worry about it. But if you find you're burning through bone meal and not quite keeping up, make sure you're not collecting way too many items. This is especially a problem with pale moss, okay? Because pale moss doesn't generate nearly as much compostable material as regular moss. Now, in my testing, I got 12,500 moss per hour. That's 195 stacks, okay? If you're only collecting one hopper's worth, one slice worth, that'll be 9,000 plus. You're going at hopper speed. You fill a barrel or a shulker box in 11 and a half minutes. This is great for a personal farm. If you're not collecting anything and sending it all to bone meal, this will generate about 800 bone meal per hour, or a little shy of 13 stacks of bone meal per hour. Not bad. Now that the farm is built, let's get into all the geeky stuff and talk about how the redstone works. Now, if you don't care about that, that's fine. Skip ahead to the next chapter, and I'm going to talk about some of the limitations of the farm there. For everyone who's into all the redstone geeky stuff, or you just want to learn, let's get into it. So there are two components to this farm. The first is the moss spreading. When moss is hit with bone meal, you can do this by hand with bone meal or with a dispenser. It spreads to natural blocks like stone. Well, the cool thing is Minecraft has ways of generating stone. To generate stone, you just need lava pouring down onto running water. So if we put some lava on top of this water that's running, see, we get stone. Awesome, we can do that all day. And pistons can push stone. Awesome. The trick is pushing the stone where we need to get it, and that's what this farm does. What makes this farm work so well is a double piston extender. This is this sticky piston, regular piston, and observer dance that we did with all of this area up here. Let's put a glass block in front of these pistons, okay? Now watch what happens when I push this button. See, it pushed the glass block 2 blocks, okay? A piston normally only pushes it 1. Because what happens is when we hit this button, this piston extends, the sticky piston does, which pushes the regular piston, which then extends and pushes the other block. Now this happens through a bunch of weird quasi-connectivity stuff. That's just weird. I don't understand how most of it works, but you can see that it does. And this is why this farm works. So what's happening up here? we have these two wide stone generators. So we've got lava on two different rows here that feed down on two different lines of running water, right? That's the water running out of the stairs, and it turns into stone. And then we use that double piston extender technology, right? That thing right there. So it pushes 2 blocks of stone out instead of just 1, as you might see on other moss farms. Well, if I can push 2 blocks from one side, I can certainly push 2 blocks from the other. That replaces this moss much, much faster, so that the next time bone meal gets dispensed on it, it's got as much clean stone that it can convert as possible. So let's talk about the clock. Now this is run by an etho hopper clock. So every time one of these hoppers is empty, these sticky pistons shift this redstone block over. Well, anytime that happens, this observer goes off, hits this repeater. Now we have to add a tick to it. Otherwise, it's not picked up properly. It's basically too fast for these comparators, okay? So we have to extend this signal just a little bit. And then, speaking of extending the signal, we have this really short comparator burn down clock. So basically what happens is, well here, let me show you. So here's that clock separate from the farm, okay? Let me slap a button down here. And when we hit this, right, see how that the signal sort of, it starts off really strong and then just fades? Yeah, this is really cool. So here we are back in the farm, and as you can see, it's running. Anytime this observer fires, right, we get this pulse through the repeater, and see how this redstone stays on, right? It clicks, and then it just sort of hangs on there for a while. What that's doing is that's putting this delay that feeds into the water stream to flush all of the items out, and that gives everything time to grow and then get broken by the stone generator and then run the water through and wash everything out. Really, really nice. So every time this clock fires, it sends a signal down through these target blocks to these pistons. So all of the stone that gets generated by the lava pouring through gets pushed up by those pistons. And you can see that process here through the glass. The signal also then comes up this torch tower and hits these repeaters, which then comes out across the furnaces and across all of these observers. And when they see that signal change, that's what pushes all of that stone out across the farm. And so we can run everything off a single clock. We don't have to run a separate clock for the bone meal that runs separately from everything else. We can run it off one clock and everything works beautifully. Back at the collection system, if you want to see how the filter here works, look up Impulse SV's video on that. It's awesome. But all of the items that get pushed out of the farm, you can see them falling down there. They drop down this water channel and get sucked into all of these hoppers, right? If you've got filters set, they'll go into the specific hopper, or they'll wash all the way down into this stack right here. As the items get composted, they'll come through these hoppers into this dropper down here, right? You can see the bone meal as it comes through. Well, we have this little observer clock that powers, it's actually powering the sandstone, which then triggers this. You could move this down and trigger this directly, but that also triggers this hopper. Now it shouldn't matter. Things are moving in fast enough, but there's no reason to lock this hopper if we don't need to. So that's why these observers are here, powering the soul sand rather than powering this. Now let's talk about some of the limitations of this farm. First off, this is a Java-only farm. Okay, this will not work in Bedrock. So for all of you poor Bedrock players, I'm sorry to say this farm is not going to work for you. Second, this farm generates moss faster than a single hopper can handle. So if you want to collect all of the moss, you need 2 sorting slices. Now, I personally don't think this is an issue, just setting up one because the excess moss gets turned into bone meal to feed the farm and keep it running, okay? But if that's a concern, go ahead and set up a second slice. But with just one, that's collecting at, said 9,500 moss per hour. That fills a barrel or a shulker box in 11.5 minutes. That works for me. Next, because of the way I built it, you do see some items get sort of hung up here, okay? There isn't a lot I can do about items popping out here, at least the way I've designed it, because the piston pushes down, breaks the items, and yeah, they can get pushed in underneath this hopper. Now, as the farm is running, sometimes they'll then get pushed out and you'll get collected, it'll be fine. The other thing you get is, as the farm runs, items will break and sometimes end up on top of this glass, okay? If that really, really bothers you, you can come in and place glass or trapdoors or something here that'll keep those items from popping up in there, but it also will stop moss from generating underneath the glass, okay? It's a trade-off, all right? You can decide if you want to place trapdoors, shelves, glass, whatever you want here to keep the items from popping up onto this glass where this redstone is. That's up to you how you want to handle it. So let's talk about pale moss. This farm works fine with pale moss, right? You can replace the moss block with pale moss and it works great, but pale moss doesn't generate as many compostable things, right? You don't get the azalea saplings, for example. You do get carpets, you do get seeds, and of course the moss. Now, if you're just collecting the moss, this will still work at the same speed as your regular moss farm, okay? Which is great. You'll still get the 9,000 or 12,000 blocks per hour. It's fabulous. But if you're collecting a lot of the moss, you might start seeing your bone meal creep down just a little bit, okay? It's dependent on some randomness. Obviously, it's not always going to generate the same amount of moss per bone meal thing. You're not going to give quite as many items. So if you're collecting the moss and the carpet and all of that, you might see this drop very slowly. Right now, I'm not collecting anything. Looks like our bone meal is keeping up, but it is something to be aware of. Now, this farm is great by itself, but you may need a little bit more power. So let me show you a couple of ways that you can expand this farm. The first way is really simple. You just place a bunch of them side by side. Here we've got two of them together, and there are a couple of minor changes. The first difference you'll notice when you place them side by side is the collection stream. As you head off towards the right, you don't need to have a collection system. You just run the water stream over all the way across to the collection system on the far left module. And then at the top, where there was the water stream for the bone meal collection, you just run it straight across, all the way across the collection of modules, and then you can drop it down. Something to keep in mind is that all of the generated bone meal will go into the left module first, and then to each successive module as you go down. It's just the nature of the water stream. As the hoppers that feed this dispenser down here fill up, then more and more bone meal will continue on down the line, filling up each successive module. Once this is fully charged, all of the bone meal will then fill up and then be collected. So if you're building this for bone meal collection, it'll take some time to warm up, but then you'll get all of your output. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this setup is that each module is basically the individual module by itself. So each of them has their own clock. You have to turn them all on and off individually. Another option is to stack them vertically. This takes a little bit more doing, but it's actually really, really cool. The way this works is it's still driven by the single clock that's down at the bottom of the first main farm. And then we use the torch towers on the back to signal everything else. So let me kind of show you how this works. Here we are at the back of the machine. There are a couple of things that are really cool here. So this torch tower at the bottom goes all the way up. Now I'll pause here for a minute so you can see where this bottom layer, right? This is where the clock would be. You basically cut out a section of it. See, there's all of the pistons for the stone generator. You cut out that center section to make room for the hopper chain and dispenser and stuff for the section below, and then keep going up. One change that has to be made for the redstone is right here around this block. for the stone generators. Down here on the first level, you can see we've got a repeater that goes into this block, and then we've got the redstone that continues on. When you stack it, you come up to this block up here. What you have to do is take a repeater out both sides of it. So one going this way that goes around, and one that comes this way along the back. That's because we're pulling power off of this block, okay? This guy right here. And that's what triggers the stone generator. And then, of course, the signal continues all the way up, and we get this whole line with the observers that fires the double piston extenders, and this line that runs out for the water capture and flushing system, and then eventually out to the dispenser and all of that stuff, okay? All of that stuff stays the same. The only thing that you have to change is you don't need the clock, so you can take out that center section, and then you switch these repeaters. And you do this on both sides. So this side here and this side here. Now the water elevator, this is what's bringing the bone meal up to the top. You take it all the way to the top of your structure. So if you're stacking 2, 3, 4, however many you've got, you run the bubble elevator all the way to the top. And then where you've got your hoppers, sure, you take some of them right all the way over into this dispenser, but you take this first one and you point it to the back, and then you basically build this big hopper thing going down all the way to the bottom. What will happen is bone meal will get pulled into that first hopper and then down and will feed the first farm. And then once these hoppers start to fill up, then it will start to feed the second farm and the third farm and so on as you go up the line. Now there may be times when bone meal will skip past this first hopper because it's on a pickup cooldown timer thingy, and that's cool, but you can't really rely on that. So basically, until these hoppers fill up, this farm won't really get any bone meal. So the more you stack these up, the more you have to wait for these all to fill up with bone meal before it all works. And that's okay, you just have to be aware of it. Once this is all full, however many modules you stack up are going to be chugging at full power. The last thing you need to keep in mind if you're going to be expanding the farm is that each module, right, each one of these sections basically takes 3 hoppers going into composters to keep up with it. If you're expanding this out to 2 or 3 modules, you're probably okay with this, but you may start to see items backing up. If you're expanding more than that, you're going to have to do something else with your sorting system. What you do with that is up to you. You could run your collection out this way and then cycle back with a bunch of composters, with water streams, right? There are lots of ways to deal with it. You just need to keep in mind that you need to have basically 3 hoppers and 3 composters. If you're not collecting anything, you need 3 hoppers and 3 composters to keep up with all of the drops. And that will do it. I hope this farm is useful for you. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more tutorials. I also do live streams 3 days a week, so check that action out. And until next time, be excellent to each other. And this is Music Free Gaming signing off.